Welcome to this series on getting CV and cover letter ready. I'm one of the careers consultants, my name's Adam, and I'm going to start by asking you a question. What is a CV for? Most people, when we ask this, will say, well, a CV is to get you a job. I want you to get out of that mindset. A CV is to get you an interview. Might sound like a distinction without a difference, but a CV is an opportunity for you to give somebody a reason to want to speak to you. Think of it that way as we're going through this. So, if we start with this in mind, then we can see what a CV actually is. Two key things. First, it's a summary of your relevant skills, experience, and knowledge. And the key word there is relevant. It's got to be directly relevant to the job that you're actually applying for. And it's a personal marketing tool. It's the first and possibly only thing an employer is going to see from you. So it's got to make an impression. The most common questions we get asked about CVs actually go to these key principles. The first one, can I use the same CV for every job? The answer, I hope, is obvious, absolutely not. You need to be changing and tailoring your CV to the specific job you're applying to. It's not uncommon for you to have 3, 5, maybe even 10 CVs, depending on the breadth of job you're actually applying to. Next, how long should a CV be? This is fairly straightforward. In the UK, you have a hard limit of 2 pages, no more. Some firms will want shorter. So for example, hedge funds, American firms essentially, banks, that kind of thing will want 1 page. But generally speaking, 2 pages is your limit. You've got to think of it from the point of view of an employer. They're quite time poor, they don't have a lot of bandwidth to spend a lot of time reading a CV. So you've got to play to that kind of environment. Should my education come first? This is going to go back to being relevant. If you feel that your education is directly relevant to the role you're going for, then absolutely, go for it, it should go first. If you think it's not directly relevant, then you're going to want to put your most relevant sections first. So in that case, maybe your education doesn't need to come first. Which leads to our next question. Should my most recent or most relevant experience come first? There are ways to do this, which you will see in other videos, but we would argue your most relevant experience needs to come first. And what you can do in your work experience section is split it up into 2 distinct sections. Relevant work experience and then other work experience. And you'll see how we do that over the course of this series. And lastly, how do I address gaps? You might have, for whatever reason, gaps in your CV, your work history. Whether that's because you went on maternity leave or have taken a break from work to go back to education. It really doesn't matter. The key is to address those gaps with a simple sentence explaining what that gap actually is. It's when we have unaddressed gaps in a CV that this becomes a problem. That's when an employer starts filling that gap for you. Don't allow them to. Make sure that you have addressed any gaps in your CV. Now, having gone through all this, what do you think are the top CV mistakes to avoid? What do you think are the top CV mistakes that we see on a regular basis? Here they are, and some of these should be quite obvious, some maybe less so. The first one, poor formatting, goes to the idea I introduced in the first chapter. Recruiters and employers are time poor. They don't have a lot of time to read your CV, so it has to be laid out in a way that is easy to read. If it isn't, they're not going to read it. Next, lack of tailoring. We get quite a lot of students say that they've sent 50 CVs out and had no feedback. And then when we ask, well, are you tailoring your CV towards the job? The usual answer is no. You need to be changing your CV to make it relevant to the specific job. At a brutal level, I need to be able to look at your CV and tell straight away what you're applying to. If I can't do that, then you'll know it's not tailored. 2 easy ones, spelling mistakes and lies. What a lot of employers and recruiters are doing when they look at CVs is looking for a reason to say no. A spelling mistake is a really easy reason. Don't give it to them. And then lies. Quite simply, don't lie on your CV. It's a massive risk to take. We all have our stories about people who've lied on CVs and it's not gone well. My favourite one was someone who put on their CV that they could speak Swedish. Wasn't an outright lie. They could speak Swedish, maybe at a restaurant they could get by, certainly weren't fluent. They ended up going for an interview and the person interviewing them happened to speak fluent Swedish, started the interview off in Swedish thinking it'd be a really good way to set the tone. Needless to say, it did not go well. Don't put yourself at risk like that. Just avoid lies, it doesn't gain you anything. The next two go hand in hand, lack of evidence and telling, not showing. Anybody can list what they think they're good at. It's much harder and makes much more of an impact if you can demonstrate what you are good at through evidence. Give me examples of where you've demonstrated these key skills and experience. This is what we're after from a CV, and this is what I'll be covering in the next few videos. And that's the end of this chapter. Thanks very much for watching. We hope it was helpful. If you could help the channel grow just by liking and subscribing for more videos, that would really be appreciated. And coming up next, we've got the absolute basics that you need to include in a CV in the UK.